Alex at Corumdale Farm. We are a year 3 Oklahoma flower farm that sells retail market bouquets from our roadside stand. In today's video, we're going to be talking all about how to make bouquet recipes and formulas so that you can efficiently crop plan and put together bouquets that are worth their price point so that you can be profitable. But before we get into that, I want to share something really exciting for those of you that have been following us for a while, especially those that watch our lives and we talk about doing merch and everything, and we were able to put it together. And so I'm wearing one of the shirts. This one says Snip Strip Bucket, which is what we kept saying on our lives when we were talking about efficient harvesting. It's what we do as flower farmers all the time, that monotonous task of snip, strip, bucket. So we have a shirt for it. It's going to be more of a unisex fit than this tighter one, but I wanted you to see the print and everything. But Eric, cameraman here, also has one of our other options on, and I want him to model it for you. Come in and model it. Look what it says.
I'm not even in the
I know, you look so giant.
Oh, squats.
Yeah, can you do it? It says buy local flowers. And that's exactly what we want people to do. That's what we're all about. But thank you, model.
Oh, I can't squat
That's
anymore.
perfect.
I'm too old for that.
So we made these templates to buy them, to try them ourselves. And I just have a funny story to share. So Eric went to the chiropractor yesterday, I think, and he was wearing that shirt. And the receptionist was like, well, do you sell local flowers? And he was like, actually, I do. And he was able to have a whole conversation. All the ladies in the doctor's office absolutely freaked out. He was able to give them our card and tell them about our local flowers because of the shirt he was wearing. So if you'd like that, you can be like walking advertisement. I think it would also make for great social media posts and stuff, like selfies with your flowers, or says buy local flowers. It's just really great advertisement idea. And this one I just think is so funny and so true, because Snip Strip Bucket is what we do all season long. So it's really exciting. I'll put the links in the description, but let's get started on the video. We are going to talk all about bouquet recipe making. I have my notes here to keep me organized and not go down too many rabbit trails that I tend to like to go on. We're going to go through every bouquet recipe I made in 2023. And the reason I want to do that is I want to prove a couple points to you. I want to prove to you that you don't need a lot of varieties to make interesting bouquet combinations. And I also want to show you that you should not be overstuffing your bouquets and making them not worth the value you're charging. So we'll put pictures up on the screen. I will list, exactly what's in it and everything. So you can even pause the video, you can look at the pictures and stuff, and you can see that the bouquets look full. They look interesting and enticing to purchase, but they are accurately priced for what we're charging. And in 2023, we charged $20 for all of our bouquets. Spring, summer, and fall, they were all the $20 price point. So all combinations you hear in this video were sold at $20. Again, we're in rural Oklahoma. And so if you live in a big city, suburbia, you can get a higher price point. Please charge that higher price point. If you can get $30 for a bouquet, sell them for $30. But we're at $20 in rural Oklahoma. I feel good about that price point, and it's a profitable price point for us because of what I'm putting in the bouquets. Before we go through the exact specifics of what's in the bouquets, I want to go over some points to remember, things that you need to be thinking about. Because if you watch this video and you leave kind of hyper focused and obsessing over the exact varieties and the exact combinations I use and fail to take away some of the bigger principles, I don't think you'll be able to apply the lessons as well to your farm, because our growing conditions are all different, our markets are different, our price points are different, and so your combinations might look different than mine. You might grow and profitably sell some of the different varieties that I don't grow, for example. And so try to focus here on these points. At the end, we'll go through the myths and pitfalls as well. So you can see some real world examples from our farm, but also can remember the general principles and apply it to your exact costs of production, your budget, your market, your customers even. So the first point to remember is that every single stem has a price. So you are not allowed to put in your bouquets a filler that you just count as free. Don't get to do that. Now, your price for it might be really, really low, depending on, what it costs you to grow it, but it has a value. And the reason it has value is because your labor went into planting and tending it, even if it's a perennial. Your labor went into harvesting it. You had buckets to buy and wash and clean and fill, especially if you use a holding solution. You might have to put them in the cooler, and that costs money to put something in the cooler. You had to condition it. You arranged with it. You did not free work to get that filler from the plant to your bouquet. So you don't get to count them as free. It might be 50 cents. It might be 75 cents. It might not be a very expensive filler for you, but you should get in the habit of pricing every single stem that goes into your bouquet. Second, you need to be pricing your bouquet to include the materials and labor it costs to make the bouquet itself. So every single stem has a value, and that value is what it cost you to grow that flower from seed or bulb to the cut stage for it to go in the bouquet. That's the price of that flower stem. But then you also have the labor and the materials to make the bouquet. So that includes rubber bands and the craft paper wraps. And if you do anything extra with that, the time it takes you to make the bouquets, the marketing time it took you to try to sell the bouquets, whatever maybe your sales outlet costs. So if you have a farmer's market and there's more cost built into the farmer's market, that needs to go into the price of your bouquet. So when you're thinking of adding up your total, say you sell a $20 bouquet, you need to be putting in about $17-ish worth of flowers. And then you have the additional money goes into the bouquet making and the materials and everything I just talked about. So you're not actually trying to put in $20 worth of flowers because there's additional expenses you're pricing into that bouquet so that you can make a profit on all of your time and labor that went into it as well. Another point to remember is overstuffing your bouquet is not going to help your business. It's not going to help your business. Like I said, each stem has a value, and when you overstuff, you're either underpricing all of those stems. If you put in 15 stems in a $20 bouquet, you've now made them not what they're worth. What has really happened is you've made more like a $30 bouquet and you're pricing it at $20. That is not going to get you profitable. I know that in the beginning, overstuffing is an easy temptation because there might be a couple things going through in your mind. It might be, I feel insecure that my flowers are actually worth that amount, so I've devalued them. My zinnia is 75 cents. It's not $2, for example, because I'm new and I'm nervous and I have imposter syndrome and I feel uncomfortable. So you've just devalued what is the real cost of that flower for you to grow, which destroys your profitability. Or you think in your mind, you're kind of coming from a emotional perception and you're looking at that bouquet that you made that was $20 and you're thinking, that doesn't feel like it's worth $20 or that doesn't look like it's $20. Even though you've priced your stems, you've priced out your formula, you've made the bouquet and you're looking at it and you're saying, I just want to add a couple more stems. What's 3 more extra stems, 4 more extra stems? Maybe it's that free filler we talked about. And then now your 11 stem bouquet is now 15 stems and you feel like it costs $20. But that's not how we reach profitability. That's not how you stay in business. And that's not how you price something to make money based on solely like an emotional perception. So that's why it's important to figure out your costs of production, or at least get within range of industry standards for the price of your stems so that you're actually making a $20 bouquet or a $30 bouquet, whatever you're charging, because that's truly what its value is and not how you emotionally perceive what it should be worth. Another thing to remember is that you increase your efficiency by sticking with a general formula each week when you're making your bouquets. Even if you only have 10 or 15 to make, it's still costing you time, like we talked about. And so working with a general recipe or formula prevents you from spending too much time on each bouquet and making each bouquet its completely different creation. Now, if you're a farmer florist, you're making a bridal bouquet, you're doing an arrangement, you're creating something that's very different than a farmer's market or a farm stand bouquet, you should be pricing that bouquet to account for the extra time and labor and design work that you're doing. But at a $20 price point, I would argue even at a $30 price point in a flower stand or farmer's market situation, you need to be the most efficiency minded as you can be. And so going through and having a formula or a recipe like we're going to talk about is the best way to streamline and keep you focused and not kind of rabbit trailing each bouquet and making it its own special butterfly. It's like we're working on a set focus parameter this week. Another thing kind of along with that is you should begin as you mean to go on, which means if it's your first year, it's your second year, or you're adding a new sales avenue, let's say you previously did wholesale and now you want to add a flower stand, and you think, you have a goal of 10 bouquets a week or 15 bouquets, for example, and you feel like you have the time to spend on making the bouquets and taking a while on them, I don't actually think that's the wisest thing to do, because eventually, and I hope everyone's goal is to continue to sell more. And so let's say you have a story like we did, where I was putting out 15 bouquets in the beginning of the season last year, and then I ended up with 50 or 60 bouquets by the end of the season because our demand increased, which is an awesome problem to have. The way I was making a 10 and 15 amount, if I was practicing spending 5-10 minutes on each of the bouquets, I wouldn't have been able to manage the scale up to 50 or 60 bouquets, because spending 10 minutes on 50 bouquets is complete profitability destruction. I didn't have that time. I couldn't get up early enough to fit that in and do that. But if you're already practicing, say my goal is 3 minutes per bouquet in the beginning, and you can get faster and faster, it puts you in the best position to scale up if your business does hit success and you really start selling more. You began as you mean to go on. So purposely starting really inefficiently and then having to catch up and change your systems or get burned out or just be spending hours and hours and hours staying up crazy hours at night to get it done because you didn't practice with efficiency in mind, I think would be a really big bummer. And so when I started with the 10 or 15, I was probably at about 3 minutes. And then when we ended the season, I was at about like 1:20 seconds. So I shaved that time in half, and it made it possible for me to make 50 bouquets in an hour. And that is a really good way to be profitable on that $20 bouquet. I know some people will say like, but I have the time and I love the design work and I love to play with the flowers. And I get that. We have a beautiful job. It's wonderful. I love playing with flowers. But again, you need to be efficiency minded if this is a business and not a hobby. And so if you kind of have that itch where you want to spend that extra time on design work and playing with flowers, I would just schedule that into your week and say, it's Thursday evening, I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna cut 20 stems and I'm gonna get a vase down from the shelf and I'm just gonna play with flowers and I'm gonna design myself something beautiful for the dining room table and exercise that creativity there, and then be very efficiency, timer, profitability minded when you're trying to do more of a mass produced scale. Okay, the next point to keep in mind is ideally you want to crop plan with your bouquet recipes in mind. And so the ideal order of doing things is you think about spring, summer, and fall. You think about the varieties you're going to grow, and you write down various different formulas and combos like I'm going to show you here in a minute. And then you take your crop plan and say, okay, well, I need zinnias in June and July for my formulas. So I'm going to plant X amount. I'm going to start the seeds at this date, and you work backwards and you create a crop plan based on bouquets you've already, like imaginary bouquets you've already made. Now, that's harder to do, I think, in the beginning, especially as you're learning how to grow flowers and how many zinnia stems do I get per plant, and how do I deal with my climate, and you're learning so many things. That's hard to do. And so I understand that. That's not how I operated in year 1 and 2. What I did was I basically went out and harvested everything I could, because I was just trying to make as many bouquets a week as our field could produce. So I harvested everything that was ready. You've probably seen it in our videos. I came in, I brought in all the buckets, I put them in the floor here, I looked at them, and then I said, okay, I have 3 buckets of zinnias, 2 buckets of marigolds, 2 buckets of sunflowers, and I kind of looked and made a recipe based on what I harvested. That's not the ideal, but I understand if that's where you're at in the beginning, and you're still able to make a recipe so that, again, you don't tank your inefficiency by just kind of like randomly coming up with combos from what you've harvested. You harvest, you look at what you have generally, you make a recipe that you can follow, and you get to it. This year, I've crop planned based on what I know our formulas are going to look like generally. And what I want to do as a year 3 goal, as we're getting better and more efficient, is to operate off of a harvest sheet. And so the way I would do that is I would say, okay, it's June 1st. Our recipe this week is 3 zinnias, 3 sunflowers, 2 basil, and 1 marigold, let's say. Okay, well, that's 1 bouquet. I want to have 75 in the stand. So I have to do 3 times 75. That gives me my number of zinnias I need to harvest. And I'm going to write them down, and I'm going to say, I can't do math live, but it's like, I need 150 zinnias. I need 75 sunflowers. I need, and then I can take that and I can harvest it. And the reason I want to work in that direction is because that's way more efficient. I'm not under harvesting. And the worst thing you can do is under harvest and then have to get a fresh bucket and snips and trudge out to the field and harvest like 4 zinnias, 2 basil, 3 celosia to kind of like finish things out, because that's super inefficient. Or over harvest, and then you kind of end up with like an awkward amount left over that's just unsold and lost and expensive compost. And so I want to be working in the reverse order and have a very specific harvest sheet. So I'm maximizing my time, I'm maximizing the bouquet capacity, and I'm minimizing loss and extra or under harvesting. So that's how I used to do it. That's how I'm also going to change a little bit. And then lastly, before we get into the exact specifics, is know your customer and what you're selling. So again, like when I said earlier in the video, don't get overly hyper focused on the specific details I'm about to give you, because you still need to answer the question, what am I selling? Where am I selling it? And who is my customer? So you need to know what your price point is. You need to know, is this a farm stand or is this a CSA? Is the CSA cost more, and so there's more stems, there's a little bit more design work? Or is this like what I'm doing, which is as many cheap bouquets as I can move through the flower stand? And then my customer, I know, wants the most amount of bright, big flowers as I can give them. They're not coming to me because they want muted tones or pastels. They're not coming to me because they want extensive design work where they care about texture and composition and balance and tonality. That's not why they're coming. They want the biggest zinnias I have. They want the brightest sunflowers I have. They don't want Dara and Amy and Nigella, if that's counting, in that $20 price point. They would prefer to have one extra really beautiful snapdragon, for example. And that's because I've spent time listening and observing my customers. You could maybe live in a community that's very design focused, or it's much more trendy. And so it wants an airy, a wispy, a softer, a Pantone kind of palette. And if that's your customer, you should be making that bouquet for them and not what Alex's bouquet looks like. So you need to answer those questions. So I hope those points to keep in mind as we go through these details are helpful and can directly apply to your farm. And Eric always tells me to say this. He says, remind people to like and subscribe. I really appreciate it when you guys like it, because we talk here constantly about feeding the algorithm, and you should be doing that on your own marketing. And so that's really helpful to us for our growing channel. And then if you're new to us, we'd love for you to subscribe and join us. Go watch our back catalog, which last year I think was really helpful, especially for new flower farms or people considering starting a flower farm. So we always appreciate it when you like and subscribe. Okay, so now it's probably why you clicked on the video, which is you want to see our exact bouquet formulas. I don't blame you. I think it can be tricky figuring out, okay, but like, what do I put in a bouquet? What is a balanced bouquet? What does a $20 bouquet look like? Alex, how do I avoid overstuffing? I get it. Looking at specifics can be really helpful, especially if you do grow at a, in a warmer climate with a farm stand at a $20 price point. It's like, you can cut and paste this. You probably can just take these bouquet formulas and use them for yourself. That's definitely fine. In order to kind of make sense a little bit with what I'm about to show you, I think it's important to talk a little bit for a second about the composition options, meaning like you hear these terms focal flower and filler, you hear these thrown around. For me on our farm, we have focal flowers. So those are like the big, the flashy, the weightiest ones, often the like most expensive, for example. And then we have what I call secondary focals, where it's still a flower, it's still a bloom, it's not a greenery, but it's not the most expensive or it's not the weightiest flower in the bouquet when you look at it. And then lastly, we have filler. And in the filler category, you can have true greenery. You can have sometimes what people will call like a spike flower, and you could have branching, you could have greenery. So just as like an example, a focal flower for me would be a sunflower. It'd be a zinnia, it'd be a lisianthus. A secondary focal for me would be a marigold, would be a snapdragon, would probably be an anemone. That's what I would put in secondary focal. And then for filler, for me, that's celosia, basil, bupleurum, larkspur. So these are not like, there's not like some official committee that if you miscategorize them, you're like stupid or in trouble. But that's generally how I think about it when I'm putting together our formulas as well. I like to have a big focus on the focals that are accented by the secondaries. And then I have a couple filler added in. That's usually how the distribution works out. So that's kind of what I'm working with here. If you disagree, that's fine. I think it's just something that helps you in your mind create your formulas and a balanced bouquet, because you don't want 10 stems of focal. You do need to spread it out, but that's where we're at. Okay, so 2023, I'm going to put a picture on the screen. This can be very picture heavy, so thank you to Eric for doing all of the edits he's about to do. But picture on the screen right now, you can pause me or just listen to me for a second. This is our grow list for 2023. There are 14 varieties on here. That's what we grow. That's what all of these formulas are going to come from. I split it up into spring and summer, but really summer often bleeds into fall. I don't have anything new growing in the fall, so we've got spring and summer. On our list, we don't grow some of these varieties anymore, and we've added some new varieties. So if you want to see that and what we're going to be doing in 2024, I'll link the two videos in the description. It's flowers we won't grow anymore and flowers we are growing. So there's a little bit of difference. Pretty much I've taken out some of the filler here that I just really didn't want to deal with and thought was a waste of time. And I added in some more focals, but if you'd like to watch those videos after, that is linked. Okay, I split it up and we're going to go month by month. Our growing season is March through September. We are going to go in order, and I'm going to give them a number name, mainly to help Eric put the right picture up because I'm not going to make him go through and like decode which picture goes with which formula. So I'm going to give it a number. So when I tell him, it can be like formula number 3, and then you have the picture. All right, so our season started in March. Mid-March, we had tulips. And so in March, our first bouquet option was a wrapped tulip bouquet. Straight bunch of tulips. It had a mix of between 9 and 11 stems. The reason for that is we grow some like really expensive parrots. We also grow some singles, and then we also grow some like much smaller, cheaper to us tulips. And so I have them all at a slightly different price point. And so if I put together a bouquet that was a little heavier on the smaller sized tulips that were much cheaper for us to grow, that bouquet would have more like 11 stems. If it was a bouquet where like, I know there was a week in there where I did straight parrot bunches that were just, I just thought the colors were so lovely. I liked keeping them together. That had 9 because they were much more expensive than the cheaper ones. So 9 to 11 stems. And then also to launch our season, our recipe number 2 was a jar arrangement. I don't like jars. I don't recommend jars, largely from a cost and an efficiency standpoint. Like I said, I can make a wrapped bouquet in 90 seconds now. I cannot make a jar arrangement in 90 seconds. And I don't want to have to charge more for the jars to account for that because I like keeping our price point at $20. So I don't hugely recommend jars, but I ended up with a particular variety of tulips that bloomed really short. It was frustrating because all of our other tulips did beautifully, but I had these shorties that I didn't want to waste. And we also have a bunch of daffodils growing on the property. And so I put together some jar arrangements. I think it was our opening day and maybe one more weekend had this option. And it was 3 greenery. I used our boxwoods that produce actually like really beautiful greenery in the springtime because they're an evergreen. So I used 3 of those, 5 tulips. It was our shorter ones. The quality is not going to be the same as like an 18-inch parrot. So I had 5 shorty tulips and 3 daffodils. So that's kind of how we launched the season. And then we had weeks, we had like 3 weeks plus of our tulip bunches and our wraps that did really well. Now we're into May. Last year we had a gap because I didn't grow ranunculus in mass. I wanted to trial it before we invested. So we had a gap where we weren't selling because the trial ranunculus were blooming, but it wasn't enough to open the stand. So we had a little bit of a gap, which we won't have this year, which I'm very excited about because that just means more sales. But now we're into May. We are in Oklahoma, zone 7. We get warm very quickly, and so we're able to have summer annuals in May, if you can believe it, when I know there's many places that have to wait until July for some of these flowers, but that's not the case for us. So bouquet formula number 3 is 3 white night or white light sunflowers. It's a pro cut, 3 larkspur, 3 bachelor buttons, 1 nigella, and 1 yarrow. This was not my favorite formula because it was the most filled bouquet that I had, and I didn't feel like it felt very weighty and impactful. It was very wispy and light and airy, which is not my preference, but as you grow, you learn what flowers you like, what work in your climate, all of that. And so I had grown a lot of the standard fillers that you see, and I learned I didn't like them, but it's what I had, it's what I spent money on growing, and so I used them, and that's what went into this bouquet recipe. But we won't have that this year. Okay, number 4, we're still in May, but this is recipe number 4. I did 1 white light sunflower, 1 marigold, 3 larkspur, 3 snapdragons. Now my snapdragons were blooming, 1 nigella, and 1 bupleurum. I liked this combination a lot better because it brought in the snapdragons and it started to feel more more heavier flower focused than like the wispy nigella look. So that was May. On into June. Kind of fun reminiscing and looking back at last year and all the things I learned. Okay, we have 5 recipes in June. So number 5 in June is 4 sunflowers, 3 snapdragons, 1 marigold, 1 buplurum, 1 larkspur. I really loved this combination. Recipe number 6 was 3 sunflowers, 5 snapdragons, so you can tell the snapdragons are really starting to bloom, and 2 marigolds. So this one only had 3 varieties, but they were bright and bold, and it felt like a huge bouquet, and our customers absolutely loved it. Recipe number 7 was 2 sunflowers. We at this point were growing orange ones because the bug pressure on the white sunflowers becomes a bit too high once we really enter into summer. So they were, I think, orange DMR Pro Cuts here. 2 zinnias, 1 status, 1 marigold, 4 snapdragons. So the zinnias have showed up. The status has showed up in early June for us. And then the next recipe, which is recipe number 8, actually ended up being straight snapdragon bunches. So I planted Potomac and Rocket, and I didn't pinch them enough or like stagger in succession plant. So it was just like my entire row of Potomacs were like, it's our week, here we go. So I was drowning in snapdragons, but it turned out my customers were obsessed with them. I think that was our highest sales day to date. So like in June when that happened, that was our biggest sellout. People were coming and were disappointed in the following weeks that I didn't have straight snapdragon bunches, which I thought was very interesting. So it was absolutely a huge hit with what was actually me problem solving. But our straight snapdragon bunches had about 11 stems of snapdragons. And so that would have included like your biggest ones that you didn't pinch, as well as some that were more like side branching and a little bit smaller. Okay, last recipe in June was number 9, and it was 4 sunflowers, 3 status, 2 snapdragons, 2 zinnias. All right, into July. Recipe number 10 was 3 sunflowers, 2 Lizzies, 4 zinnias, 1 status. So the Lizzies have started. That was the main premier focal that everyone was very excited about. It was awesome to market, to be like, have you ever seen a flower like this? Come and get them. Our 4th of July weekend was our highest sales day of the entire year. I think we sold like 65 bouquets. I was in tears because I was just emotionally overwhelmed at the response we got. It was an awesome day. And I'm pretty sure that was this formula number 10. Okay, number 11 is 5 zinnias, 2 Lizzies, 2 basil, 1 status. So the fact that there are no sunflowers in here tells me that something happened with our succession planting or just didn't do a very good job and I didn't have them. So I upped the zinnias, and in July our zinnias are kind of at their prime. So that makes sense. Okay, formula number 12 was 6 zinnias, 1 Lizzie, so the Lizzies are kind of winding down, 2 marigolds, 1 basil. And then lastly for July, this is formula 13, 2 marigolds, 1 sunflower, 6 zinnias, 1 basil. So that was July. In August, we take August off. We have a video about that of all of our reasons, the main reasons being the bugs are at their highest, the heat is at the highest, and customers are at their lowest purchasing time. And so why work harder or the hardest of the year for the lowest amount of sales? Why not rest, work on farm chores, catch up on things, work on all the tasks that got neglected, start homeschool for us, plant for the fall, do all of those things. So we take August off, so I have no formulas there. And then lastly, we have September. We could technically have sold into October, but we just didn't succession plant sunflowers long enough. I'm not sure if we will do that this year as well. It was really nice having like one final push in September and then closing the farm and having still all of that extra energy to do all of our bed flipping and prep for planting spring flowers to overwinter. I really liked that being done by early October. But in September, we had 2 formulas. So this is formula number 14. We had 6 sunflowers, 2 celosia, and 2 basil. And then the last formula, formula number 15, we had 7 sunflowers and 3 celosia. Clearly, these are very pared down formulas with only 2 or 3 varieties. And the reason being, because we closed in August, I didn't want to spend all that extra time and effort limping additional succession plantings along like marigolds and zinnias, because again, August is just so darn hard here. I said, screw it, we're going to succession plant sunflowers that are happy, and celosia will live on the surface of the sun. So I know I can get that through August just fine. And I think customers liked it because they had a month off from buying from us. It's now the fall in September. People are decorating for the fall. They're kind of in a fall mood. And the dark sunflowers, the deep magenta celosia, it kind of felt special and different and very much fit the season. And so that was our formulas for September. So there you go. That was 15 formulas over the course of, what is that, 5 or 6 months, using only 14 varieties total. There was obviously some overlap where I could, use a Snapdragon in spring and a Snapdragon in the summer, but only 14 varieties. And if you also noticed in our formulas, there were between 4 and 5 varieties. It was only that darn wispy early May where I had to use the Nigella and what else did I have? Bachelor buttons and stuff. And so I used more varieties. It's 6 varieties. Okay, so now that we've talked about the points to remember for your farm, the specific formulas we used on our farm, here at the end, I want to talk about the myths and the pitfalls that you hear around this subject in general. And so the first myth is that you need lots of variety. Personally, I hope after watching this video and looking at the pictures of our 14 varieties, I would argue that every single week felt like the bouquet looked different. The pictures looked different that I used for marketing. The colors were different. I used 3 zinnias one week, but then you got 6 zinnias the next week. So the combinations were changing and stuff, but I was still only working with 14 varieties, often only 4 or 5 to choose from in the particular season. And yet I was able to make interesting and exciting combos for the customers. And so I don't think that you need to have 30 plus varieties to keep people interested. I think there is so many color combinations and formula combinations with a small amount of flowers, and that is just going to make you more efficient and more profitable and less mentally loaded down with what it really takes to manage that many different flowers and arrange that many different flowers, to post-process condition that many flowers. We worked with a small amount with lots of different colors, and we created something interesting every single formula. So I think the lots of variety thing for customers is a big fat myth that you shouldn't believe anymore. The next one is that you need a lot of different formulas within your sales day. So let's say it's Saturday, July 6th. You need to put together your formulas so you can go harvest, and you think you need 3 separate different formulas that day. I think that's a myth as well. If you can see from what we just went through, I worked with 1 formula, but there was natural variation within that, because if you notice in my formula, I didn't say 3 yellow zinnias, 1 purple status, 2 orange sunflowers, and keep it very color specific, and then make 3 other formulas in my head using the different colors. I kept it very generic, and so then naturally during the bouquet making process, each bouquet ended up having its own personality, even though the general composition was the same. I find that to be much less cumbersome and difficult to work with and slow you down if you're making 3-4 different formulas to work with. I think if you zoom out and make it more broad, you will give your customers variety. And so when someone comes up to the table, they might gravitate towards the bouquet that got 2 purple sunflowers and purple sunflowers. That would be a kick. Could charge a lot for that. 3 purple zinnias and 2 pink zinnias, and those are the colors they love. But then this bouquet over here ended up with 2 yellows, 2 oranges, and a white. And that's the color. It's like, well, those bouquets are exactly the same in the general formula I used, but they ended up with their own personality because of the color variation. And you can let your customers decide that instead of bogging yourself down on the design bouquet making side of things. I hope that makes sense. The next myth, I think, is if you believe that you need, for your farm stand or your farmer's market, you need a lot of flashy extras to attract people to your flowers. So that would include ribbons and tags on your jars, tissue paper, stickers, stamps, ribbons on your wraps. I don't have anything wrong with that. I think it looks beautiful aesthetically. But what you need to ask yourself is, are you doing that because you're trying to compensate for maybe an insecurity you feel about your flowers? Or are you doing it because you directly see it helping your sales and you charge for it? So remember when we were talking about putting about $17 worth of flowers and then you have $3 for labor and material? If you're adding extras that cost you more and slow you down, for example, if you need to tie a ribbon on something, that is going to slow you down. You might not be able to make the 90-second bouquet. It might end up being 2 minutes. Well, that extra 30 seconds, cutting the ribbon, tying the ribbon, keeping the ribbon out of the water, all that kind of stuff, you should be charging for it. So that either means your bouquet formula needs to have one less stem to stay at the $20 price point. Maybe that means your bouquets need to be $25 because they do have the extra razzle dazzle. But you need to ask yourself, how am I accounting for this extra material cost and this extra time cost? And I'm not just, kind of like adding things because I feel a bit insecure, like the flowers can't hold their own. So don't feel like you need to do those things to have special flowers, but if you're doing them, make sure you think through your process and you're actually getting paid for that extra. Okay, so those were some myths. Here are some pitfalls. We talked about a little bit, but I want to reiterate it. It is a major pitfall if you are overstuffing your bouquets. You will not be able to convince me that 15 stems for $20 has you profitable. Not even at sunflowers, which are direct sowed from a seed, do I think you make a profit there on 15 sunflowers for $20. So do not overstuff your bouquets. If you are new and you feel insecure about the quality of your flowers, or you're just not sure people will pay what they're worth, I think you have a couple options. I think one, you could just choose to be confident and know that there are a lot of successful, profitable flower farms that do charge what their flowers are worth, and they've found customers that love and support them and will pay that amount. So you could just choose to kind of let that negativity go. Another thing is, if you truly don't feel, or you're unsure if your flowers are up to the quality, to charge $3 plus for a Lisianthus, then there's nothing wrong with like TOing and saying, I'm going to grow for a year. I'm not going to sell. I'm going to grow. I'm going to gain in my growing knowledge. I'm going to gain in my confidence. I'm going to gain in my efficiency, and I'm going to write down a business plan, and I'm going to really work on perfecting a high quality product so that when I do launch, I can feel confident at that price point. But what should not work and will not work for you long term is starting your business overstuffing your bouquets, because you will eventually realize how that's losing you money and you will have to adjust it. And you've put yourself in a sticky position with the customers because you've been stuffing your bouquets. Now you're realizing like, I need to bring that 15 down to more like 11, 12, depending, and they're going to notice it. I mean, we all live that with the, what do they call it? Like sizeflation, for example. It's like you're buying your same pack of graham crackers for your kids at the same price, but then you open it up and you realize at least 20% of what you used to get is gone. And that feels really frustrating because you're paying the same price, you were used to getting a certain product, and now it's different. And so it's like we said in the beginning, it's better to begin as you mean to go on. So do not overstuff your bouquets. Along with that is don't underprice yourself. If you feel insecure again, or you feel nervous, take a year to learn how to grow flowers that can be priced to make you money for all of your effort, and just take the selling pressure off of yourself and be patient, have delayed gratification mindset, and just work on growing a flower that is worth the price point that you can make money. So just like overstuffing bouquets doesn't help you, it does not help you to launch a flower farming business with a $10 bouquet when you're very soon going to realize reality, and that's $10 is not going to make you money. So you need to up your price significantly, but the product is going to stay the same. Now, customers will often ride out a price increase. We kind of understand the concept of inflation and things are going up in, costs are going up and stuff. But there's a difference between with a business, naturally raising their prices due to the economy and you needing to raise your price because you just started way too low, either because you were nervous or imposter syndrome, or just frankly didn't know the reality and costs of flower farming, and now you really need to price adjust. You're just creating a harder marketing situation and relationship between you and your customer. And so price accordingly. Don't undercut other farms in your area. Look at what other farms are selling their flowers for and figure out how can you compete with them within that same price point, and not create the $10 jar arrangement that's not helping you, and it's not helping the local flower farmers around you as well that are maybe more profitability minded. Okay, next up is another pitfall is, we talked about this, you're spending too much time to make your bouquets. A $20 bouquet does not have a built-in design fee like a $40 bouquet does, or a bridal bouquet does, or an arrangement in a vase. People don't think they're paying you for florist design work at a $20 bouquet. They're just trying to get the flowers. They're going to take them home. They're going to unwrap them. They're going to open them. They're going to trim them. And then they're going to arrange them how they want. They're going to put them in the vase how they want. And so how you agonized over how you balanced them perfectly in the wrap might not be how it ends up being at home, when they rip open the paper and take off the rubber band and, plop it in, sort of thing. And so just, again, know what you're selling and what your customer expects. If you run a CSA program and your CSA costs $40, it costs $35, it's a big bouquet, people are spending a lot of money on it. I think it would be more reasonable to say, I'm going to spend more like 2-3 minutes on that instead of a goal of 60 seconds, which is what I'm working towards, because the customer relationship there is different and you can price that into the product. But if you are just at a farmer's market or a flower stand and you're trying to move as many bouquets as you can at the cheapest amount, your time creating the bouquets and the labor in that, it has to matter. You have to get serious about it. It doesn't matter if you only have 10 bouquets to make. Begin as you mean to go on. If you are spending an hour to make 10 bouquets, set a goal to make them in 45 minutes, and then set a goal to make them in 30 minutes, and slowly work towards, maybe you need to change. We have a video about how I make our bouquets so fast. So if you want to see that and that's helpful to you, I'll link that. But I realized what was really slowing me down is the way I was laying out the room. So I spend some time thinking about how can I not be a Roomba that's just inefficiently ping. Well, I guess technically Roombas are complicatedly inefficient, but you know what I mean. Just ping-ponging all over the space. How can I start in point A and finish in point B with the least amount of movement? And when I thought through that, I shaved off 30 seconds. It was fantastic. So set that as a goal for yourself, especially as we're about to all start our seasons. Launch your season with almost a competition within yourself of how quickly can I create a quality product. And then lastly, this is a big one we talk about on this channel, that one of the biggest pitfalls is that you do not spend enough time marketing your items to sell them, because it doesn't matter if you have an awesome crop plan. It doesn't matter if you have a properly created bouquet formula. It doesn't matter if you made that bouquet in 45 seconds. If it doesn't sell, that all just cost you money. And so try to remember, especially as the season is starting, to not have your head down at your farm exclusively, meaning like the growing and the harvesting and the making bouquets, but lift your head up and realize flowers don't sell themselves. And so you need to build time into your week, into your day, to focus on marketing. So that means posting regularly on social media, responding to DMs, brainstorming how you can get your name out there more, creating maybe a Facebook ad, all those sorts of things, working on an email marketing list with a newsletter to sell your flowers. Because I could produce 100 bouquets this year, but if I can't sell 100 bouquets, it doesn't matter that I created the best crop plan and the best bouquet formula if I don't have customers. So marketing can be a huge pitfall. Flowers don't sell themselves. You need to sell them to people. So that is all my notes. I genuinely hope that this was a helpful video. I hope it was helpful to think and give you a lot of questions now, still in the off season, to think through an answer for your farm. Most of us still probably have time to tweak crop plans, to put together bouquet formulas. And then I also hope seeing our exact formulas showed you that maybe you can let go of some of these myths of not having enough variety, it not being interesting, it becoming boring and repetitive for customers, because that wasn't the case at all with our farm. I think there's so much creativity within a couple varieties that you can play with. And so, yeah, I hope this is a helpful video. Again, like and subscribe. We are so thankful for all of you that are new and old and been with us for a while. If you want some merch and some exciting shirts and stuff to treat yourself with and use for marketing on your social media, those links are in the description. And we'll see you in the next video, guys. Thank you so much.